I've had an epiphany on this and I want to share it with you. In my training as an OBGYN 25 years ago, I was taught the time of menopause is when you quit having periods and you don't ovulate anymore. And the perimenopause was 5 years before and 5 years after menopause, because peri means around. So that's the time surrounding menopause. Here's the thing, ladies. Symptoms now of perimenopause start in your 30s. And it's not really perimenopause because you're not near menopause, but you sure feel like it. WTF? What is going on? Right around that shift, we've always known that there is a brief period of time where your hormones go wacky and you're on a roller coaster ride. Estrogen is up, estrogen is down, progesterone is sometimes there, sometimes not. And that creates a tumultuous time, but it's not meant to be 15 to 20 years. Now people are saying perimenopause, well, starts in your 30s. No, it doesn't. The symptoms start in your 30s because your hormones are screwed up, but it's not perimenopause. It just feels like it. And you know what? There's things that you can do about it. Let's talk about the 3 phases of perimenopause: early, middle, and late. And the early phase is the one that is so disruptive nowadays, starting so much earlier. You have symptoms of estrogen dominance, which just means you have more estrogen than progesterone. And there's a couple reasons for this. Sometimes you're making too much estrogen, not very often unless you're on fertility drugs. But what about if you're making the right amount of estrogen and you can't get rid of it? That's going to cause an accumulation of estrogen. It's not that your ovaries are making too much, it's that your gut can't get rid of it. And that will cause estrogen dominance. Or if you're not making enough progesterone. And lastly, if there are things in your environment that act like estrogen. And that's a big one in our modern environment because plastics and a lot of these chemicals and a specific mycotoxin released by mold are very structurally similar to estrogen and they lead to estrogen dominance. And I think that is why we have these symptoms that are so wacky starting so early, is because we have this abundance of other things in our environment triggering estrogen, or our gut is so messed up from inflammation that we don't have the healthy gut bacteria that help us dispose of our estrogen. So we have this little revolving door that the estrogen comes through and is supposed to be eliminated out the gut, but it sneaks back in because the gut bacteria aren't healthy. That phenomenon of the revolving door is the enterohepatic recirculation. The liver is the thing that puts the estrogen into the bile to be eliminated through your gut, which is your enteric system. But if the gut bacteria are not healthy, then there's a particular kind of bacteria that allows the estrogen to disassociate from its little chaperone hormone, and then it sneaks back in through the side door. That creates this revolving door through the enterohepatic circulation. I want to dispel a myth that perimenopause is unavoidable. The symptoms of prolonged perimenopause are unavoidable. I actually read somewhere that someone described it as your ovaries are having a yard sale and getting rid of all their hormones all at once before they go out of business. And that makes it sound like it's unavoidable. But I honestly, in my heart, I believe that if we take care of ourselves, we have the stress reduction and the health and the healthy eating and the healthy gut, that we do not have to suffer through perimenopause. It is avoidable. Phase 2 of perimenopause is the middle phase. We have estrogen levels that fluctuate. Sometimes they're high, sometimes they're low. Mostly they're going lower. And that's when we start getting hot flashes, difficulty sleeping, joint pains, some brain fog, because estrogen is so important for brain health. And then our progesterone levels stay low. And in this phase, our periods will space out. Sometimes you'll go 40, 50 days without a period. Sometimes you'll have periods closer together. And that is where in traditional medicine, the doctors are trained to give you birth control pills at this point. Or unfortunately, if they're really crazy periods, then they offer you a hysterectomy to get rid of the uterus that creates the bleeding issues. But the problem is not the uterus. The uterus just responds to what the hormones tell it to do. And you don't need high dose artificial hormones to control this. You need to get to what the root is and get to balance your hormones, not just suppress everything with high dose, what we call exogenous hormones, which means that they're coming from outside. Phase 3 of perimenopause is when your estrogen levels stay low and progesterone levels stay low. And this is the period right before menopause. And it lasts somewhere between maybe 1 to 2 years. And at this point, your periods get much further apart. And then all of a sudden, whoa, surprise, here's another one. And that can be disruptive. But this is the very kind of tail end. This is when doctors would give you some kind of hormone replacement therapy. But before you do that, make sure you get the right testing done. Make sure your micronutrients are optimized, that we're working on inflammation, that we're working on stress reduction, that we know your risk of heart disease. Those things are also important because if you have rusty locks and you have a lot of inflammation and you have major environmental toxic exposures, or you're living like a tiger's chasing you 24/7 in the fight or flight mode, you can take all the hormones in the world and it's not going to fix your problem. So you need a hormone locksmith in those cases. You need someone that looks at the whole picture.